Stop leaving your family's wealth exposed in these uncertain times. Big banks and soulless corporations won't deliver this personalized plan you need to protect and grow what you've built. Rocklinc Investment Partners gives you independent, battle-tested advice from professionals who actually focus on what is happening and know how to navigate volatility. With a proven history of success through tough markets, we'll position your family to be wealthier in any storm and come out stronger. Don't wait. Call 905-631-5462 or email info@rocklinc.com today. That's link with a C. And we are back with more on News Talk Sauga 960, our final segment of this Monday, June the 1st. Thank you so much for tuning in on the beginning of the month. I tell you, one of the ongoing themes of this show, just in the last half hour, has been the government favoring foreigners over people in Canada. And we've seen multiple examples of it. There was, of course, the discussion around this company in New Brunswick that fired Canadian workers, hired foreigners, and then was subsidized for those hires. And of course, the minister was asked about it, and she said, "Oh, I don't know anything about that. I'll be happy to look into it." We see this sort of thing happen all the time. We see the growing percentage of foreigners making up our military. And now I see this story here pop up. Conservative MP Fred Davies questions whether federal funds should be used to purchase real estate for asylum claiming housing. And one witness says it's a reasonable use of public dollars as asylum claimants have housing needs. Yeah, you know what? Canadians have housing needs too, Jonathan. We're in a housing crisis in this country, and these people have more interest in helping out foreigners in the country than they do in helping the people of this country. It's absolutely ridiculous. What do you make of it?
I'd go further and say that it's immoral. The charge of a government is to look after its own people and protect them and keep them safe. And this is actually an attack upon their own people. It's clearly immoral. It's a abdication of the chief responsibility of government. And it's outrageous. We need to throw these people out, vote them out as fast as possible, and hold them accountable. It's just crazy what's going on. That's the whole purpose of government, is to protect its people, look after them, and make sure, when I say look after, ensure there's a proper law and protection of private property and so forth for a free market to operate. This isn't a free market. If people want to come to this country, they need to come and work. They need to be independent the way they used to come 20, 30 years ago, 40, 50, 60 years ago. The people that came to Canada came with virtually nothing. They came to work. And they earned their income, and they created wealth here the old-fashioned way. We don't hand out money that we don't have. As you've pointed out, Canada is a very needy country now. We've been run into the ground over the last 11 years by just outrageous incompetence in terms of economic policies. And so there's a lot of Canadians hurting, and we're actually just stomping all over them, taking more tax revenue out of them and giving it to people that are coming to this country and not prepared to work. It's crazy. It's absolutely immoral.
Yeah, people who made no contribution to this country whatsoever, having access to our healthcare system, which is in the midst of collapse anyway. But it used to be that governments had a built-in incentive to do everything they could to make the lives of voters better, of the citizens better. Because, of course, if you want to stay in power, the way to do that is by making voters happy. They either are or they aren't. And if they're not, then you're gone. And if they are, maybe you get another kick at the can to stay in power. But it seems like all of that's changed now. It seems like their real incentive here is to undermine the will of the citizens as much as possible and to serve the interests of those outside the country and themselves. You know what I mean? So we've gone from trying to serve the interests of the people in order to stay in power to destroying those people, making their lives as miserable as you possibly can in order to make them dependent on you. And in the meantime, what do? You bring in as many people as possible from the outside with an aim towards creating new voting blocs of people who are going to be grateful to you rather than those who have been paying into the country for years. And now, of course, I see we're in rough shape here financially, so we may have to cut back on seniors' benefits. It's like the people who've been here all their lives, many of them, paying into the system year in, year out. And then when things get tough because governments are spending way too much money and borrowing way too much money, the people who get to pay for it are those who've been paying their taxes dutifully their whole lives, and they're the ones who are going to get hammered with cuts. It's just makes you sick, really does.
When you talk about from time to time, they hate the West, and it's almost if successful countries around the world, the United States, Canada, Northern European countries, and Australia, and so forth, these countries that have succeeded and created tremendous wealth over the last 100 plus years. It's almost this guilt complex. We haven't done it ethically, legally, and now they want to take the wealth that's been created in all these countries and start redistributing it around the world. And that's what they're doing. Bring the world here, bring the third world here, and hand out all this money to them. And it's theft. It's absolutely theft. We have built these countries up because of the values and principles and markets that we have held in the Western world. And we've done it in an honorable way. And they should be emulating us and copying us in their own countries, not bringing people in who then bring all of the bad behavior and the unethical practices that are inherent and built into many of these countries. And they bring all those practices into Canada and start to undermine it. So again, it's a complete reverse. It's this suicidal tendency that we have now that we're killing off our country.
Yeah, and now we've got the Bank of Canada predicting that the Canadian economy will be in bad shape for quite some time, this post by Bruce McGonigal, because of education and productivity gaps. And he goes on to say, this is what you can expect when our education system focuses on gender identity, hands out taxpayer-funded snorting kits to kids. Is Canada in a recession? This is one of the things we got to talk about. Yes, this stems from 2 consecutive quarters of annualized GDP contraction.
Yeah.
We're told repeatedly by the media and analysts at CBC, and of course we all know what great economists they have at CBC, that this isn't really a technical recession. It's not a real recession. What do you think of that?
It's an absolute lie. Of course, it's a recession. Even if you're just using the terms of economists and their definitions, 2 successive quarters of negative growth is a recession. And we've had negative growth in the fourth quarter of 2025, about negative 0.2%. And we've also now had negative growth in the first quarter, negative 0.1%. But Mark, if you go back the last 10 years, actually the last 11 years, we've averaged GDP growth, they say, of 2.1% per year. Okay. But then when you adjust for population growth, so actually what is your growth per person? It's less than 0.6% per year. Now, again, this is real GDP. That means they're adjusting for the inflation that they say exists. I would argue that the inflation rate is at least 1 to 2% higher per year than what the government releases. I would suggest that we've had negative growth really for almost 11 years in this country when you adjust for people and when you actually adjust for true inflation, not the government CPI. We have seen tremendous contraction in the Canadian economy. That shouldn't surprise anybody when you look at the policies that we've been adhering to. In fact, if you look at business investment, which, as you pointed out, you need business investment. Bank of Canada's talked about this because that's what is going to drive your capital growth and spur productivity so that you're going to be able to grow your economy. Business investment in machinery, equipment, and intellectual property has fallen below 2015 levels as a share of the economy. So it used to be about 14% of our economy would go into machinery, equipment, intellectual property, et cetera. It's down to 11% now back in 2025. The capital per worker is declining, and that undermines our productivity and our living standards. And we've talked about this before, and you've talked about it with other people. RBC report showed that over $1 trillion of net investment outflow out of Canada over the last 10 years. $1 trillion of capital outflow. So for every dollar of inward foreign direct investment, roughly $2 is left Canada. And so it's impossible for us to grow our economy with that kind of capital leaving our country. And that capital is leaving because of regulations and laws that have been passed in Ottawa and sometimes in our provinces, which are hindering businesses from growing. They're driving up the costs of investments, driving down returns, and businesses are going elsewhere. Our tax system is not competitive with the United States. And so it shouldn't surprise us that money is going south of the border in most cases. And this is serious. And so when Pierre Poilievre talks about a recession and CBC just laughs at him and CTV and so forth, don't listen to them. This is incredibly serious. Our unemployment rates are going up and our manufacturing base is continuing to erode in this province, especially in Ontario. And so we are in tough shape unless we have a dramatic change in policies.
They're trying to pretend like this is a real recession. Things are going really well. In fact, Canada is strong. They keep throwing this stuff out there, but I think it's actually worse than what they're saying.
Yeah.
They've papered over the cracks of our economy by bringing in a whole bunch of people, giving them cash to spread around. They're doing that plus massive hiring in the public sector. They've hired, 100,000 people over the last, I think, 10 years or something, added huge levels of staffing at the public. So you're paying those people to spend money as well. So that's how they've papered over the cracks and hidden the fact that our economy, that the private sector economy, which is really what you desperately need in any Western society, is shrinking. Let's check this guy out. This is the announcer at the CBC. He was asked about it. Supposedly a business reporter. The guy's name is Anis Haidari. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing his first name. But let's just check this out, Jonathan.
This is small, according to Stats Canada, but it is present, and it's not anything that economists wanted to see. 2 consecutive quarters is what we call a technical recession, when the economy shrinks, when there's a contraction in economic growth for 6 months consecutively, really. But when we say it's a technical recession, it's because there's also different ways to measure this. Do we compare it year over year? Do we compare it quarter over quarter? Do we compare it month to month? And needless to say, while we aren't seeing a lot of green arrows in these numbers, by some definitions, this is a technical recession. By some definitions, it's not, but there is not a lot of growth happening here. We are seeing some shrinking in the GDP, the gross domestic product. That's one of the ways that we measure how big the economy is. This technical recession, if it happened, may be over by some measures, or may just not be as big a deal as it sounds, because oil and gas prices have gone up so much, and that does inject money into the Canadian economy.
I don't understand what he said at the end there. It's not as big a deal. Okay, so he thinks that the high gas prices, oil prices, will benefit Canada. And in one respect it does, but unfortunately consumers are feeling the pinch as well. What do you think of that?
The fellow's an absolute dolt. I've never heard such drivel in my life. It's just outrageous to listen to these guys. The gap between the United States and Canada has never been larger in terms of our GDP per capita. It's widening every day to the benefit of the United States. And it suggests that, okay, it might be moderated a little bit because oil prices are higher. Yeah, oil prices are higher, and that does help Alberta, that's in Canada, that sends some of that oil down to the States. But that's the same industry that the Liberals have been attacking and want to destroy. And then they're looking to this industry to help us. And again, as you've pointed out, yeah, it helps in our exports, and that's wonderful. But every Canadian is hurting because they have to pay more for their energy costs, and that also filters into inflation within our countries. I don't know where they get these guys speaking. They know nothing about economics. They're absolutely clueless when it comes to understanding how the economy works and being honest in terms of the position Canada is now in as a result of incredible incompetence at the government's level, not just federal, but in many of our provincial governments right across the country now for more than a decade. And we're not going to get out of this easily, as you mark. To change some of these trajectories will require significant amount of work and change in policies where businesses feel that these changes are actually long-term, because we've undermined the confidence of businesses to invest in this country. And that doesn't change overnight. Even if you have a change in ruler in terms of party, they'll want to see laws change, and they'll want to see us being serious about investing back in this country and taking these things seriously.
Thank you so much. Appreciate this, Jonathan. How do people get in touch with you and find out more about the great services offered by Rocklinc?
Sure. Rocklinc.com, our website, is probably the easiest way to track us down. Rocklinc, link with a C at the end. And if you email us just at info, I-N-F-O, at rocklinc.com, we'll be right back to you. And I'd love to hear from any of the listeners. And that's the business we're in, to look after your wealth. And we'd love to have a discussion with you.
Jonathan Wellum, Rocklinc Investment Partners, terrific company. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thanks, Mark. Have a great rest of the week.